So we went ahead and finished off yesterday just to review. And if you missed it, don't worry. All of the trainings are actually already online, and we will be parsing this 5.0 training up and placing it online as well under our online videos section, which is right here on .cms.com. Resources and online courses. So we'll be putting it all here, and we're going to be parsing it up by course. So you'll see the Content Architect course here will be parsed up just like this. We'll be able to look at content types and file content types and custom content types, etc., and see the recording of this training up here there for 5.0. So we left off after creating a new content type. We went ahead and created some movie content type. We categorized it with a genre. We added a tag field and show how those tags are managed by a tag manager in .cms. We showed how to relate content types by creating a movie and a cast content type and then relating the two. We then went to the time machine and looked at the future and the past. We, kind of messed up our homepage and then went ahead and came back and looked and saw that the snapshot was still there. We took a look at site search, and I believe that's where we stopped. And we took a look at how site search actually has full text indexation so that it can dive down inside a file. We searched for a guy's name, Hugh Johnson, and found him inside of a PDF. So we are going to pick up with CMS maintenance hosts and then dive right into session 2. So feel free to chat in your questions into the GoToWebinar control panel. I will be stopping right after I, go over each item, and I'll stop and ask if there are any questions. I'll look over to my chat, answer those questions, and then we'll keep pushing on with the agenda. Okay, so let's pick up with CMS maintenance. So if we look here at under system on my local instance here, we look under system and we go to maintenance in 5.0. It hasn't really changed other than look and feel from the 4.33 version. Here you can see there is a cache manager. Here you can flush all of the caches, or you can take a look at all of the different caches that we try to store independently in .cms. There's block caches that you can wrap around certain heavy pulls of content, so webmasters can actually control cache at the widget level anytime they want with their own code. We have if you search in our documentation for tagged cache or a block cache, you'll be able to see that documentation on how to put a sample wrapper around any code that you write if you think it's heavy, and put your own time to live on that cache. Category cache, container cache, content-lite cache, file, page. There's a whole bunch of caches here that you can see, user cache, everything. You can go ahead and flush all of them to make sure that you're hitting, your next hit is the DB. The next time that a page is hit, it will load in. So we may say our pages load just a little bit slower than the normal instantaneous, just because it's going to hit the DB and then it's going to go ahead and load up. This is a legacy menu cache using an old navigation macro. So really the menu cache is now listed here with the rest. You can refresh stats on all of these caches, and it tells you your total memory available, total memory located. This is just on my local machine, not on a real server. And it's got your H2 cache, your caffeine cache memory, and each of the caches listed out and showing you how much they are consuming on your server, so that you can make plans without actually having to log on the server and take a look and examine how much memory those are consuming. We looked at site search index, and we talked about the site search index. You can back it up via scripting. This is the entire index. So if we have some clients that have 1,000 different websites that they're managing. Each user group doesn't even know about the rest of the sites. They just log in and they see one site only. But the main group has to be responsible for managing all of the websites for all of those hospitals and et cetera, et cetera. We've got, lots of clients doing multi-tenant hosting. So this is the main index. So part of the backup procedures should be, once again, you back up your assets directory, database dump. And of course, this should be all scripted to just run on a persistent basis on, every so often, if not certainly once per day, sure, maybe multiple times per day. And then you want to get your, at least this index so that you don't have to wait for indexation after you start up. You just start up and everything's good. And this is your main content repo of every single contentlet on every single host that you have, right? So once again, the items here that you can do, you can download the index snapshot that is available in our documentation. If you just search for indexation, then you'll be able to see that main resources and documentation. You just type indexation, and you can see how to manage those. Now, remember, there is the RESTful API to manage indexes, and then there is the site search indexes. And, that's what allows me to, search for indexation just now. That was Elasticsearch. So that is be my site search index I'd want to back up so that the second I bring back my server, I can still, search my Elasticsearch indexes very fast and have that full text indexation. And also I have my main index of all of my content so that all of my pages can find all of my content and don't need to do any reindexation on startup, right? So this is where I can actually see that, flush ES caches, restore an index snapshot. If I wanted to do something through the UI, not real common other than maybe a reindex at some point if after upgrade you saw some ghosted version of a file or something like that, and maybe the upgrade wasn't handled right. Things can happen. So here, if you look at your tools section, you've got a couple of options here, which if somehow I did not have access, because I'm kind of more of a front-end web developer myself. So if I did not have access to a server, to a machine that I needed to develop on, and of course, sometimes you don't always want to start, building new things, or especially if they're things that could mess up the rest of the site. You're doing something very, very heavy and you want to do some test development, or I just, I have full CMS admin access here on the back end to a particular staging site or development site, and I just want to back up a local copy so I can do some really powerful, crazy things, install plugins, add new features and stuff like that. But I don't want to mess up the rest of the development server for the rest of the developers that are there. So what I might do is right here from the UI, you don't even have to ask a server admin for access. You would not hit either of the first two. You'd hit download data if you just wanted an assets dump, a DB dump. But this is the one that I would actually hit if I were you and I didn't have access to my server. Otherwise, I'd just go to my server and grab it. Well, I wouldn't rely on even the .cms tooling to go grab that for me. But if I didn't have server access, which to me is more immediate, then I would click download data and assets, and that's going to zip up and download your DB dump and your assets directory. Then the only thing you would need to do is start up a local instance, just like I'm running right now. Drag your assets directory over to your .secure directory, and your root, and then sorry, not the .secure, the root directory. And then you would point your context.xml to your DB that you'd install in Postgres or whatever, whatever you're running on your server. You'd have to have the same version running locally, and that is an important thing. You want to try and have the same Java version installed. You want to have the same version. If it's Postgres 9, then you want to have Postgres 9, or if it's Postgres 10, you want to have Postgres 10. And and 5.0 supports Postgres 10, by the way. So you want to make sure that things are the same on the server settings and what you're downloading locally. And I'll show you in just a second where you can actually check that out. Okay. So I download my assets, do that, and then start up my local and have a local copy that I can develop on. The search and replace utility and many of these things here in the tools area are only available for system admins. They're not, for full, site admins. They're not available to content publishers at all, and I don't think they should be. They say you should probably back up your database and your assets, make sure you got a good copy before you would try any of these things. There is a search and replace utility for all content. You can go into containers and replace everything. If the name of your whole organization changed, if your logo changed, I don't know, something that would be site-wide and sweeping, changes that you wanted to make, you could do a search and replace. You just have to make sure that you're careful and you do a little testing there before you would do that on your production server or anything like that, or push to the production server. Fix asset inconsistencies just gives a quick, revamp of your assets to make sure that all of them are, stored and refreshed and, displaying properly on your site. There is a drop old asset versions, which this one is kind of useful. What you can do, and let me show you what this does, is if you are creating lots of content. We were creating the movies yesterday, right? So let's just go to movies, and I probably created at least a few versions of Ratatouille yesterday. So if I look at my history, not my reference, the references shows me what pages I've actually dropped this content on, so that I can actually click to that and go directly to that page. So that's kind of nice that any time you drop static content on page, then you can instantly know where else that it's being used. But if I go to history here, I can see the full bring back. Now this persists forever. It never deletes itself, so every version history. Now you notice that there's only one working that I have, it's got a orange light status because I have it open right now, right? So that's my draft version, is whatever I'm doing right now. Then it's got a published version, which is in the little green check light status, and the last time that I actually published it. But this version really isn't being used at all. It's old and dead, right? But, I can't, it does give me the ability to bring back previous version if the latest change was a mistake, right? But if, these dates start getting to 2017 and 2016, and you don't need versions of your content that are over a year old, I would think, so on a regular basis, you can take all of these old versions out of your system. And, so today we're on August 1st. So I could go ahead and run in my system maintenance. I can go ahead and run in my tools, drop old assets versions older than August 1st, right? And then execute. And it doesn't affect the published or the live versions. It just drops the old asset versions. So 440 all old asset versions, because I removed everything before today, So now if I go back and I look at that same content, right? And I click on Ratatouille and I go to the history, those previous versions are gone. So it just, clears out the old duds that you're actually not even using anymore. But you can see it didn't erase our content. It didn't affect the working, because Incredibles is still saved waiting to be future published, right? And it didn't affect the published versions of my files, just the old versions of the files, right? Okay, so we go back to system and maintenance. And tools. Now there is another, you could, and now this is, of course, you have to be real decisive about this one. You can put a whole bunch of identifiers here. We looked yesterday. Here, let me open it up in a new tab so I can quit going back and forth. So if I open up Ratatouille here, I'm not really going to do this because I want to delete the content that I placed, but I could take the identifiers, or I could download close. I don't want to do anything. I could export my content, and of course I can take this same CSV file and I can import my content. And click on that, open it up in Excel. Excel's popping up on my other screen somewhere, I think. Where are you, Excel? Oh, there we go. Okay, so this gives me my identifiers. It gives me everything about my content. It gives me my tags, Disney and cooking, and my genres, and all of that good stuff. It even tells me where my posters are located, my release date, my unpublished date, and it gives it to me in the format that I need to re-upload it in, and then it gives me my language versions, mostly just so I can see, which version that content is in. And if you use this same CSV file to then re-import the content, the identifiers can be left there. You don't have to have, especially if you have your identifiers here, you don't have to put the language code and country code. You can actually select it on import. I'll show you where that is. But anyway, so here is an export of your content so that you could actually, take a look at all the information on your content and then, look at those identifiers, and maybe you want to come back here and you want to delete that content. You just paste that list of identifiers, comma separated. You'd have to maybe paste that into Notepad or something like that, and then put a comma separation in between them, and then you could put that right here and click execute. Now that does a unpublish. What normally you have to unpublish, archive, and then delete, like a 3-tiered step. This is a 1-step, provide the list, click execute, and it's gone. And if you want it back, you better contact the sysadmin, because otherwise it's gone. That's why this tool is only available to sysadmin or CMS administrators, right? The highest level access. Delete the pushed assets history. So there's a little history tab. If we look at our content and we click edit and history, there is also a push history in addition to the version history. So every time you push this content to another receiving server via push publishing, wherever it is, it's going to keep a label on all of that, and that also has the same kind of unlimited history that your content versions do. So that gives you a little tool for the sysadmins, and somebody should have it on their calendar to every once in a while go ahead and clean that stuff out, because it can get just long in the tooth in the UI. You can do search and replace on all of your assets only. So this is all of your file assets only. So the one up above was content and containers and templates and stuff, other objects, but this is specifically referring to files. You can refer to files by their file extension. If you just would need to make a replacement in your CSS and you want to change it in all your CSS, that's a pretty helpful one, actually. So, that one you can do as well. I would take a backup of my CSS before I did it, but you can choose a specific site or all sites and do your search and replaces there as well. Once again, I would back up anything I'm searching and replacing just in case, right? You've been warned. Okay, now there is a tail of a log. We right now are it's pre 5.0, so we're actually mapping our log files again. So the same way it's in 4.3.3, so you can actually choose your .cms log and pop that up. We're not quite finished with that. That's one of our last steps before we release. So, but this is where you can actually pop up a tail of your log and tail your .cms log or your Catalina.out. Here's that system info that I actually talked to you about. And this is where you can go ahead and say, okay, well, if I'm going to download my DB and my assets, then what do I have to have installed locally to match what's on, the server? So you could be looking at this on the server. I'm looking at it on my local machine because I already have .cms installed locally. But I'd need Java 1.8, running on Tomcat. And it gives me all my information there. And in my log, I can also see that I'm starting up in Postgres as well. And this is all the information that only a developer or a sysadmin could love, right? About your complete system, your install, your Java installation. It's telling me even my username and that I'm in Costa Rica. So, it's kind of scary how all the information that it has there. If .cms needs a thread dump. Let's just say you contact support and you've developed something, a plugin, and your plugin is clashing, or you're having some sort of performance issue on your server, and .cms support asks you for a thread dump. You don't need server access for that as well. That's really nice. And so you can just click reload threads, select all, copy that, put it into GitHub or something like that, or Gist or something like that, and then send that to .cms, and then you guys could collaborate on trying to debug where exactly maybe a plugin went wrong, or the current development you're doing, what might be conflicting with the .cms file that you didn't consider. So, those type of debug type things are available here too. Also, your logged in users. So let's say you're bringing down a node and you just want to know, okay, who's on this specific node. You refer to it in a specific way, so you're hitting that node in the URL, and then you can see and say, hey, maybe you forgot. I put out an email saying that we're going to bring this node down. I see you're logged into it. I'm going to restart it. We're doing an upgrade, or you're doing something, and that way you can see who actually is logged in on that particular node. Okay, and the stubborn about it, you can click invalidate. You can't invalidate yourself though, so don't worry, it's safe. I can't select myself here, but if I had other users logged into my local, I would be able to invalidate them. And that is the maintenance portlet. Okay. Any questions about the maintenance portlet? Pretty straightforward, I think. Okay, I think I see some people typing in all good. So let's go ahead and push forward with hosts and how to manage them. So if you are doing multi-tenant, and there's some really cool ways to do multi-tenant and some little tricks. A lot of people will put their VTL files, velocity template language. So here's all of where we put on the starter all of our VTL files for pulling news, and here's our news listing. So there's all the things you'd never want a content publisher to ever kind of touch, right? And you can abstract it to this like application folder. It's kind of like this is a webmaster folder. All right, webmaster store stuff there. You never permission it, but it's not as protected, just in case some other webmaster decides to get kooky and say, oh, I want to just put this guy on here, and then I want to cascade and reset the permissions all the way down. We'll show why that's a bad idea. We give great power with .cms permissions, and with great power comes great responsibility. So if a webmaster came up to the host and said, I want to, from the host, permission downward and affect every permission on every portion of my site, they could somehow give access, being really mean and not paying attention to warnings, but they could. So if I totally wanted to abstract from every user in the system to another host, all my VTL files, I can still refer to them. Let me get a piece of code. I'm trying to think. Well, we'll just show you how to create it using the site manager, and then we'll worry about what we'll throw there. Okay. So once again, host variables and the copy host feature. Let's just say that you're going to create, I don't know, 100 different websites, and they're all a hospital, or they're all a bank. You have different branches, right? Or and maybe they have to have their own site, and you really do want to make it, each has its own site, not just a piece of content. You could just make that content, and there's different locations. But or it could be something like you create different real estate websites for different real estate agencies, and you want to unify all of the data or something like that. So if you wanted to create multiple websites of the same exact type, there's two different kind of best practices here. One, you could come down to System and Sites, and you could add a new site. And the first one I'm going to do is I'd start thinking about, where am I going to put all the code that all of those similar websites all share? And I'm going to try and write smart code that can be called from any of those sites and act predictably. And then that smart code file is also in it, that VTL file that's in my global kind of site is also going to call and expect certain local CSS files to be in certain exact locations so that I can just copy site, copy site, copy site, and I never have to change those globalized VTL files. Okay. So I'm going to click next. I would just have to go to, once I copied all my skeletal sites, I just have to go and change those local skinning files, right? So I'll call this first site, global, just because you don't have to. And this is going to be a blank site, right? And I'll save and activate this site. And then I'll have to go ahead and refresh. I got my global here, and then I should be able to actually switch to it, right? So if I switch to global, I come over here to the site browser. There's nothing on this site so far, but I could add a folder, maybe called VTL or application or whatever I want to do. And now what I've done is I can drop my VTL files here, and actually I just gave a file to somebody that we can actually use on our server. Let me actually just grab a quick piece of widget that I handed to somebody on a support call, and we will drop that there. That'll be a great example of how you can pull content by tag as well. So I just dropped this code here, which should work just fine. I'll put it actually in a new text wrangler file. So a sysadmin was asking me, he was helping out a support client, said, how do you pull tags again real quick? Can you give me an example? And so I just went ahead and shot him over a quick example of how to pull tags using Velocity. So what I'm going to do, so I'm actually going to connect to this server via WebDAV, save this VTL file, and then pull it from the demo host, which shows you exactly that best practice, right? So I'm going to click here, go connect to server, and I want to connect to my local host. You can see I've done this a few times, but I want to do it in English. The last number is which language of the asset files do you want to interact with, right? So I want to interact with my English version of my files. Yes, I don't worry about if it's a circular location. And then it's your .cms login. admin@cms.com, our default demo login, and admin. And now I logged into my WebDAV, and there's my new global host, and there's my VTL, right? So now I can go ahead and take this file that I'm working on. I can file and save as, and I'll go to localhost. Let me disconnect from this other host, and go ahead and hit global and VTL, and I will call this news search.vtl, right? And save. And now if it just updated. And there's my news search on my WebDAV. And of course, if I click over here, there it is now on my server. And then the nicest thing is, well, two nice things, is if I just protected this here, but I want to actually pull it on a totally different site, then I can just come right here, go back to demo, go into my training folder, and I'll create a new page, and I'll call it test news pull by tag, and I'll just select whatever template here, save and publish. Okay, now I want to, on this site, go and get the kind of centralized VTL file from the other site. So just click at it, and then here is I want to add a widget. That's dynamic code, right? And then I just say I want to VTL include. We automatically add for you a searcher that searches, so I can go ahead and create a new VTL include. And then I can, here's whenever you're creating a new one. Otherwise, I could search for one that's been previously created. that's grabbing a VTL and parsing it. So this is widget that pulls news by tag. And I can browse now my brand new site that I just created and go to that other host that I'm never going to add or permission any users to. It's just going to be web admins only. So I've totally abstracted my and all the code for all of my pages. And even better, if I create 100 different websites, I can have that one news search on every single one of them, and all I have to do is reference it in this way. And save and publish. And then that guy should be pulling my news, but maybe I have a different identifier here. Let's see. Close. And let's see my little guy here. Reach news, and what I'll do is I'll just take away my host completely, because I did this on the demo host. Make sure that that's really, yeah, that's what I get for copying out of Slack. You can see this are not the same at all. That's trying to wrap it. Yeah, you got to be careful where you copy and paste from. Yes, we know. Oh, stop it. Shift. Oh, it's killing me. I'll just delete it. Okay. And now I can delete him. Okay. And everything else should be fine. And now we're pulling the gas price roller coaster because my code, even though it had bad double quotes in it because I pasted it from the wrong place, actually is pulling all of the news items that have, right? So if I actually save now, then I'd be just fine. File save, and yes, it'll say I made changes locally. And then that should still be pulling here. Yep. Okay. So it's pulling my my news that actually has the tag gas somewhere inside of it, and then it's displaying every single tag on the matching content, right? So that is how you can abstract every single one of the files that you want to protect. Obviously, this is a very small file, but if it's pages and pages and pages of code and you really don't want anybody accidentally to get access to it, totally abstract it to a different host and completely. And that gives you more than just the advantage of abstracting permissions and access to those files. It also gives you the second part of sites that I want to cover is I can add sites and I can copy an existing site, right? And so I can determine exactly what I want to copy. I can copy everything. I can only copy, pages or just folders. Maybe I don't want the content on the pages. Maybe I do. And then you can create a ghost site that's kind of like a skeletal site that has and refers to all of those global VTLs and expects those global VTLs to be there the same way that I just parsed the global VTL file from a page. And then you just copy it. And that's exactly what HCI did, who is a large hospital site that they have over 1,000 hospital websites running on that server. And they were able to copy the skeletal hospital site, then reskin it each time. And they only had to touch the local files. They never touched the global files because the global physician pulls, nursing pulls, everything. I remember helping them, bring their sites up, and they were averaging, I believe, up to 20 websites per week. It was an award-winning performance and implementation. And you just click next, and you say what you want your new host clone to be, and then you save and activate it, and then you add its own Google Maps, its own Google Analytics, its own add this, and then whatever other properties you want to add, because the host is just another piece of content. So if we come here to content types and we look at host, you can just search for it like that. We click host, it's another content type that you can control. So if I wanted to add, maybe for each one of the multi-tenant, sites that I'm adding, I am going to add an e-commerce key. So I can add an authorized.net key and connect, so I can connect to a shopping cart or something like that. And maybe I would make that unique so that, among multiple hosts, it would never be repeated. And then you can see that's authorized net key. It shows me my velocity variable right there after I create it. So just remember, authorized net key camel cased. And then I would have to, of course, go to my content, which is my host. So let me go to site browser, or I could go to the host list, whichever. And now I can go down to my brand new required property on every single one of my hosts. That's why I might not make it required. But if I had a whole bunch of e-commerce hosts, maybe, each had their own authorized.net key, then, or I could call it the property from the global, site if it was for all of my hosts, the same key. Then I'll just put 88776655443322. There we go. That's my key. And then I'll lock, save, and activate. Now I've got Google Analytics, authorized.net key, Google Map. Okay. So anytime I need those host properties for my copied, for my global, whatever, I can just go and I'll go to that same news poll. I'll just edit this guy and put it right above him. Oh, I got to click on here if it's my VTL I want to change. Okay, and I'll put host name, and I can just do something as simple as host.hostname. And if you look at the actual host content type, that's exactly the way it is as far as a velocity variable on the field on the host. And then I can do Google Analytics. I could do that authorized.net key. And then I'm just going to do host.Google Analytics. So obviously you should never use host as a variable, right? You should, and there is a list of reserved words. And .cms, so built-in variables and reserved words, and host is going to be their container and server name. So it's got a list of those things that you should avoid as a name whenever you're creating your variables. And then I'm just going to do host.authorized.net key. Was that it? Authorized. Okay, yeah, I was right. Second guessing myself here. I consider that a good practice. Okay, so I am right now. Oh, what did I do? I got one of those another weird variables in there. Okay, let me save it from here. Let's manage this guy. Grab this. Close him. And paste it here. All right, looks good to me. File and save. Yes, I do. All my double quotes look good. Okay, and refresh this guy. And there we go. Okay, so I've got demo.cms.com. My Google Analytics key is showing up here, and my authorized.net key. Remember, I typed 887766. All showing. All right. So that is a nice way to be able to work in whatever favorite text editor or whatever, you know, in Eclipse or whatever, on files as if they were local, but they're actually on your server. CSS, SAS, whatever you want to do, and just save, and then you can instantly see your, you know, your CSS, your styling change, and you don't have to be actually on the server. You're just in your local editor editing a file that's on the server, right? So any questions about hosts, host variables, the copy feature, anything there? Let me bring up my questions. Lost my questions there for a minute. Try to find my questions window again. Where are you? Good, the webinar is not helping me. Okay. All right. I see all good. So we will keep plugging on. All right, now we did create, if you remember, our own simple template and container. Now we're going to create an advanced template and talk a little tiny bit about themes and how you create themes so that you can use that template designer. Okay. So yesterday, just as a brief review, if we look at templates, we created this little 2-column movie template by just you know, clicking on, you know, add a new row, add a new column, etc., etc. Whether we want a header, you don't have to parse your header file. You know, you don't have to parse your footer file. You can choose a totally different theme and just, you know, what do you want? But let's just say even all of these options, even though you can install any framework, you can customize and install, and in our web developer training, we'll be doing this. We'll be throwing another theme in there and then start to create new templates with it, and talk about the files that can, you know, make up these themes. But let's just say that's not enough. You need to be able to do, instead of these layouts, you need to have a pixel perfect 5149 or something like that. That's fine, but that would be more of a advanced template, right? And I think one of these is an advanced template. I think it's our Bear Mountain one pager. No, which one is it? Is it our intranet? There we go. Okay. So I am going to then, and you can see this intranet theme template is also just using the same files that are right there in the theme. So you can do both. You can do a hybrid, right? And you could just use the template designer until you say, okay, I want total control. I want to insert some JavaScript in between these divs and whatever you want to do, right? And so this is the entire template. This is the entire layout, and we're manually parsing the containers. And we're going to create a brand new template right now just by copying this code. And here's the template and what it looks like. I guess I'll create my own little intranet. It's right here in the intranet site, but I'm going to create my new page. I'll use that template and then I'll switch it on the fly. Intranet page. And I will use intra, so I can have my intranet 1 column or my intranet 2 column, etc., etc. I forget which one I just copied. Close, templates, and that was intranet homepage. Okay, so let's go ahead and use that. So let's create a new page. And we use that intranet homepage, right? And save and publish. Okay, so we get a totally different look and feel. We can start editing, we can start changing the site. Now, I have over here in this area, or if I actually look at my layout, I can edit my page, save and publish. Oh, yeah, we can't change it for an advanced design. Okay. Yeah, so that is one good thing to keep in mind. If you actually have an advanced template where you're totally controlling the code, then you cannot start, rearranging the layout or anything like that of your page. But you can, go to the Content tab, edit, and start creating content. So here I've got one little area to go ahead and add content. Here I've got a larger area to go ahead and create content. I'm going to manipulate this layout, and I'm going to change it using my own and take away some of these containers and add some of these containers. If we look at my code, so I'll just open up a new guy here. If we look at my code, then we can see that that corresponds to this first one is a small column container that's over here on the left. Then after that small column container, then there is this default container that's being parsed in the mid and underneath it. Then there's a large column and a medium column container. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this default 2 container, and I'm going to put my movie container on it. Okay. So let's go to templates, and I'm going to add an advanced template starting from scratch, and I'm just going to call this Dean's custom intranet movie template, whatever that means. And then I'll paste my code here. And I don't want to mess with that little on the left, but I actually want to take inside of these divs, and these divs is just however you want to style it. This is using Bootstrap methodology to lay things out. So that's my small container. This is my 12. This looks like my large container here. This one is a medium-sized container here. So I'm going to make it my large container up top. I'm going to put my movies there. Right, so I can just delete that container code and totally change it to a different container. So I'll add, and then I'll just search for movie. And there's my movies container I created yesterday and put on the template designer template, right? And I just click add, and then I can go ahead and adjust that and tab him in. And it automatically gives me 2 comment lines, tells me what container I'm parsing, and then it just parses that container for me. It does it all for me there. And I'll go ahead and I'll save and publish that. And then I'll try to add, actually I'll just take my intranet page, and I'll go to the properties of my intranet page, and I'll say Dean, and there's my new custom intranet page. I'll add that, save and publish. And now here's my new layout. And if I click here and I add content, then I can create and add new movies in that area, where of course that other container you couldn't do that. So I click on movies and I want to just select, and all my styling is done by the container, right? Containers are reusable. You can even put the same container more than once on the same page. And there we go. But you'll notice the H2 is being styled by the CSS, which is in my theme, so it matches the rest of the page, right? Easy peasy. So we have now created two different types of templates. It is important to note the fancy drag and drop around that we did with our template designer template, we are not able to do with the, so if we go back just to review that, here's my training home. If I don't like my layout here, I can go ahead and click on layout and rearrange, the way that this is laid out, because this is a template designer template, right? And I can grab that, put it over here. I can add another, container, put whatever I want it to be, kind of magnified in here for the purposes of this presentation. So that is making this button hard to hit. There we go. If I'm not fully magnified and I'm on my regular iMac, then I can hit it without a problem. So then I'll choose, I don't know, medium 2. And, I can drag this guy around. I can, now I'm really messing it up. I'll just drag this guy back and I'll put my movie container back up top. And yeah, I'll get rid of him. I think you guys get the idea. Yeah, I want to delete that. And save my layout. Then go back to my content. Now I'm back to my page. And I can once again drag and drop, my content around if I'm not so zoomed in here. There we go. And reorder my content and everything, and add other content here on the side. Add a widget. I'll add a new YouTube widget. I'll search for Ratatouille, if I can spell it. And search YouTube for Ratatouille review. Click and select that guy. Some are, not all of them are allowed to be placed on other websites. So the YouTube widget respects that. So that automatically puts my my content there. I click save and publish, my content saved. Now I got my Ratatouille video over here, and that complements my little Ratatouille content. And then I can then also drag and drop that content around my pages, and it will automatically restyle, as long as the container actually allows video content to be placed on the page. So you do lose some of that fancy layout control if you do the advanced template and write your own code in there. That's the only thing to keep in mind. For 5.0, I can save and publish my page and start playing my movie.
Now, this is sort of a last
Okay. So now we are going to move on in the agenda to form content. We, in the web developer course, will show forms the way that I think any team that has webmasters that know JavaScript should do them, REST API forms. And we have on our demo site, and right here, I think even in our 5.0 version, we have under demos, we have a RESTful content save that I'll be getting into the code of. But that'd be a pure code form, but is a much better total control way to edit forms. And of course, you can step right into that code, and you want to throw JavaScript, you want to throw jQuery, you want to throw whatever you want to do. As a matter of fact, this is a jQuery form. Then you can do that. You can inject the content into workflows and all that stuff. However, in this course, next week we'll be doing the web developer course. In this course, we're just going to talk about dropping a form that is a no-code form. So there is, if you wanted to create a form out of any content type, you could click here to content types. You can add a new form content type, and just say whatever your new form is, and then start adding fields to it. And you can see its form name. It's going to create a new form. Now there's already one here. If I search by form content type, there's a contact us. So I can open it up. And you can see it's got a form title, a form email, a form return page, and a form host. And that's kind of the required first fields. So you'd add a form title, what you want your form called. You'd add an email for whatever user is going to get the email. You'd add a return page. That'll be your thank you. This one's contact us thank you. Where do you want it to be stored? Or that actually your forms can be used across hosts so that it'll store automatically whatever website the form is coming in from. And this one's got a first name, middle name. These are just simple text fields like we've done already before. Maybe a little validation that it can only be letters. Middle name, last name, email, well, there's no validation on that, but you could add email regex validation. Mailing address, address 2, address 3, state, zip, country. So how can we place that form content type that we create and instantly create a form out of it? All we have to do is come here after we create that. I will go to that same test news by pull, and I'll just delete this. It doesn't get rid of it in the system. I can always place that VTL widget back. I'm just delinking it from this page, and I'm going to add a form, right? And it just automatically knows that that is the only no-code form in the system. I click select, and then it drops my form for me, okay? And these are just line divider fields, that are placed at the top and the bottom there. Now, what's the bad thing about it? You might say, well, that's a fully working form. Why is there anything wrong with that? Well, what if I want to change the, the styling or make it one at 2-column or something like that? There is a way to do it, but I'd have to drop a VTL up above because I can't edit this. And that, as a webmaster, would drive me absolutely insane. Now, if you are like that organization I said, maybe that hospital organization, you have local webmasters need to create their own forms, but they don't know code. I don't know why that would be the case, but anyway, let's just say it was. You could then say, you can create your own local forms, create them. They could even create it until your web, master web team has a chance to then take that and convert it into a REST API form. At least they could have something working in the meantime that's a no-code form. Right? So that's the disadvantage of that type of form, but I certainly would recommend that you actually add a widget and that you add a REST API form, and I do cover that in the web developer training, which we're also delivering next week. So that is our form content, but once again, recommend against we should do the REST API forms. So we are going to then now cover push publishing, workflow schemes, broken link checker, and internationalization basics. But before we do, let's go ahead and take a break, a 10-minute break here. It's 5 after the hour for me, but I don't know where you are in the world. We have lots of clients, so we're going to come back at exactly 10 minutes. So look at your watch, and I'll be back in 10. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started back up now. Before I did get started, are there any questions about anything we've covered so far? CMS maintenance, hosts, templates and containers, at least in their most basic form. We're going to talk about themes, creating themes so that you can create template designer templates in the web developer course. These are just the form content type forms. And then we're going to actually skip push publishing to the end. We're going to cover workflow schemes right now. Well, no, we'll go ahead and set up push publishing right now. Then we will talk about workflow schemes, broken link checker via workflow schemes, and internationalization basics. Okay. Any questions? Okay. I think we're all good for now. All right. So if we were going to set up a push publishing configuration, let me see if I have another server that I can push to here. Yes, I do. Let me make sure that he is up and running. And let's see if he's on, but let me do that in a incognito. He's probably on 8080. If I started him up, let me start him up real quick. And I'm going to, obviously you got to have another server that is the same exact installation. So I'm just starting up my .cms 5.0 on the other end as well. And we'll just start them up. Okay. Okay. And let me just take a quick peek. Add the context XML, make sure he is set up correctly here. Stir Postgres. Well, that's not right. Noam is not right. And let's go ahead and save that. And let's try to start that up again. And let's go ahead and tail. Make sure I have my database configured properly. Hopefully I remembered my Postgres password there. It looks like I did. But user Noam, it wasn't going to work for me. Okay. All right, starting up just fine. And now I'm going to start configuring my push publishing locally for that website. And what we'll do is, as that one is starting up, we will make this like a half screen. That's why it's so hard to magnify your screen whenever you're doing these types of demos, because you got to show so much stuff. Okay, so this is my sender on the left and my receiver on the right who's starting up here. And I'll do an admin, but he's probably still not up. Okay, let's go ahead and configure this first. So I'd go to System and Configurations to establish push publishing, and I'd go to push publishing environment. So System Configuration, and then it starts off in the basic configuration. There's some new nice options here for 5.0 as well for styling your backend, and also here I set up my push publishing config. There's my licensing controls, my network, and my push publishing environment. So the first thing you're going to add is an environment. I'll just call this Amazon prod environment. And thank goodness he's not HTTPS. You need to have them both, they both need to be HTTPS or not HTTPS, make sure that that's the same, right? And then I'm going to push to one endpoint, which it would be your configuration if you're on a clustered set of servers. Because by the nature, clusters share, right? They share the assets, they share the content repo, they share everything, and what they do is they network broadcast to each other. So if you say push to all endpoints and you're actually pushing to one of the node clusters, then you're going to have double broadcasting between every one of the servers, and it's just needless network noise for absolutely no benefit whatsoever, right? So that would be bad. So here's a push to one endpoint, and then who can send to it, and this is where I can apply as many permissions as I wish. I'll just say me, the admin user. I don't need to apply anybody else, and I'll click save. Now that's the environment. Now the environment can have many different servers here. Or, so if I was not pushing to a clustered set of servers, then I would have said, push to all of them individually, right? And then I'd start adding my servers here one by one. So I'm going to add this remote server that has, I'm sure, started up by now. I'll press admin. Yep, he is started up. But I'm going to add, and then I've got to make my endpoint name, and I'll just call this production. And then I pick whether it's going to be HTTP, HTTPS, AWS3, static. Each one has their own kind of config, that you need to add. So static publishing, dynamic publishing, we got it all there. And but this is going to be a dynamic.cms server. So then I'm going to paste in my IP address only, right? It's my address too, and it gives you examples of your domain name, or if you have to hit it by IP like I do, then that's the way you put it. So it does helpful hint. Then you can have a some path and some file.txt that's got some sort of encrypted, big, old, long, huge code inside of it, and then you could have both files on both servers, upload them, and then it'll dive down into the file to secure the handshake between them. Or you can be very simplistic like I'm going to be, and I'm going to just type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 because I'm so secure. And here I'm going to have to install my .cms license here real quick, but I'll show you how easy that is to do. So I am logging in over here, and then I'm going to go to System and Configuration and Licensing, and then just request a trial license, right? I'll just say Dean, and Dean at .cms.com, and .cms, and email me my license, please. And so it already emailed me my license. That's how easy it is, folks. And then I just open up my email on my other screen, and then I go back and paste it and apply my license. So if you have your own development environment, you download .cms locally, you can be up running on enterprise, and you have, I can see that, it's valid until the 31st. So you get a whole month to go ahead and play around with your .cms instance, right? So now I'm going to click on publishing environments here as well. And I'm going to not have a send to from my production server. I'm going to have a receive from. So I have to get whatever my IP address is. So what is my IP? Hey, no hack in my network, okay? Okay, so this is my IP, and receive from, I'm going to have to add that server on. So I'm going to call this, Dean's computer. And I'm going to put my from there, right? And then the same exact token or encrypt file or whatever. So now once you do that, and you've established that quick configuration, then you come here on your sender, configuration and publishing environments, and now I can check integrity. It's the very first thing you should do to see if you've got any copies, some doppelgangers, like a folder that's got the same name on both sides or something like that. And this will make sure that your keys, and it says no integrity conflicts found. Now I could create an integrity conflict, and how would you do something like that? How could you mess things up on purpose? I could come here to my site browser in both of my hosts, and I could right click and create a training folder over here too. Right? This is why you should only allow authoring on your senders. And you can have as many senders as you want, but just allow one set of user, let's just say it's product publishers. Allow them one authoring server, and they push to as many push publishing environments. It has permissions to control who can push, when they can push. It's a workflow item that they push via their workflow. But don't go to each server and give them access to go doing things on every one of the servers in your system. If you have one authoring server, you can do anything, including removing content, including time publishing content on any of the other push publishing servers that you're connected to. So I have never once gotten a good reason for I need to be able to author back and forth directly on each server. It honestly doesn't make a lot of sense and can create things like this. I can create a doppelganger. I already have a training folder, right? And so I create a training folder over here too, right? And now if I go back to, and then, this has a different ID. This has an ID that ends with OCE5A, and this is a fake, right? This is a different one, right? So if right whenever you set up your push publishing, if you have done anything like that, you can check integrity between the two, and then that'll find your mistake. And it'll say, hey, you got some conflicts, view your conflicts. And then it'll examine all of your content types. We got nothing to fix here. Examine all your folders. There you go, right? HTML pages, file assets, users and user roles, anything where you got doppelgangered. And it says, hey, you got a training folder here. It's got a local node. It's got this identifier. You got a remote node that's this identifier. Which is it? Do you want them to be copacetic or not? And so I want to fix the conflict, and this is the training folder I've been working on. So I want to go ahead and say, hey, remote node, you need to get in line and accept my ID, and that whenever I push the stuff with the, in this folder, it's going to push directly that folder. So I want to fix at the remote node this bogus identifier, right? So I'm going to fix conflicts, fixing the conflicts at the remote node. Cancel over here, and then whenever I come back to my site browser and just look again, and now make sure I'm totally refreshed here so I don't get any false negatives. And now they've got the same exact OCE5A, right? So now everything's all good. Now I can right click and push publish directly. And I'm pretty sure these two are the exact same version. And so as long as that's the truth, and what you should do is whenever you go to push publish, and this is all in our push publishing documentation, whenever you create new content that has these content types and it's got movies and you've got genres. If I push my content right now, as a matter of fact, let me just go ahead and do that to show you. Okay, I haven't used all of my categories yet. I only have action, adventure, and comedy on this one, and I only have adventure, animation, and comedy here. So it's only probably maybe 4 total categories that I'm actually using. So if I take just my content and I say, okay, push it and also create the dependency, which is the content type, right? Let me see if I've got a workflow action on this that I can push publish. Yes. Okay. So here I can just right click, and I can push publish, or I can look here at available work options and push publish these 2 pieces of content. It will create the dependency, and then I get this option here. Now, we could make a workflow action that just would have executed immediately, okay, and we'll show that as well. And this push says, do you want to push it right now? Do you want to remove it because you just pushed these 2 pieces of content and you realize you messed up? Or do you want to push it now on 8/1 and then on 8/31 remove it as if it were never pushed at all, and all the content will disappear from the production server as if it had never been pushed at all? So you got all of the options there. And what does this force push mean? Well, if I've pushed let's just say instead of 2 little movies, this is 100,000 movies, and we're really doing, a site like imdb.com, and you don't know what new movies. So the content publisher is just like, I don't know which movies are new movies. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to select every one of them, and it's 100,000, right? And then they say, okay, now that I've selected 100,000, I'm going to push publish. Well, the system kind of guards you, the webmaster and the server administrator, against some 100,000 push that was completely unnecessary. So what it will do is it'll say, okay, I know the content publisher said push 100,000 pieces of content, but let's examine this sensibly and let's look at all the new pieces of content and all of the pieces of content that have been updated, and let's only push those since the last push, right? But, and then hence you get this box, and you just push this way and it'll be sensible like that. It'll only push the new and updated stuff. But what if somebody is really horrible and they come here and they have access to both authoring on both servers? So it could be a really mean, webmaster, and they delete all the content. So this just got pushed 5 minutes ago, but 6 minutes, later, somebody deletes all the content on purpose. Now, my local sender doesn't know. It just knows, hey, I just pushed this stuff and nothing new has been added. Nothing new has been updated. So if you tell me to push again, I'm not going to do a thing. All right. But if you know that your push is not making it across, you've checked your integrity, everything's all good, then that means somebody did something mean on the receiving server since the last push, and then you can force push and cause every single thing you've selected to be forcibly pushed to that other server. So you want to warn content publishers not to do this, by default. It's more of a, hey, why didn't the first push work? Let me try the force push, and also the integrity checker to make sure you don't have any conflicts. Okay. So I am going to look at my available work actions. I'm going to go ahead and just push these over. Now, whenever it's pushing, it bundles up. It stores those push publish bundles in just like we looked at yesterday, because somebody was smart enough to say, hey, where's that time machine stuff getting stored? So as you start bundling stuff up, it starts storing these bundles here, right? Time machine bundles, push publishing bundles, all in that assets directory, right? So where can we check on this? We go to site and the publishing queue, and that's where we can track it. All right. So I can look at my status history, and there I can see it's already done, but A little too fast. I should have clicked here earlier. And so it's not only created my content, but it's also created the content type, and it's also added the categories in the tree. But I wanted to purposely do this, only push the content, not push the categories. So you see that it does it, but the limited way that it does it if you don't also push the categories from the category manager. So now if I actually go to types and tags, I can see not only the content was made over, but the movies and cast, because cast was a dependency of movies, there's a relationship, right? And then if I go to categories, take a second to load up. It did push my genre category, but it only pushed the 4 that are on the content, right? So it will handle the dependency, but it's not going to push and synchronize every single category for you. If you want to do that, then you'd come over here to categories and you'd push from categories. And this pushes every single category and mirrors it over. It does a synchronization of every one of these genres, right? It actually will do all the other categories too. You can't select a category and say, oh, I only want to push that one. This is a full sync. Otherwise, you can just push your content. It'll be just fine, but you won't get the sibling categories that are all at the same levels. So I can just click push publish here. I want to force it, well, just want to push it right now. And then you can go ahead and push your content types or whatever, but it's good. I think I am in the practice of whenever I create new content types, first I'll go ahead and do a category sync, then I'll go ahead and push my folders and my files and everything like that. And then we can come over here and we can take our training directory, and I can push publish this guy over and push him over to the other side as well. Then I can go click on the and start seeing it all. And whenever you do, see this one's pending, and I click here, I can get a complete report of exactly what was sent, when it was sent, what was my bundle ID, so I can actually go look in my bundle in that assets directory if I want to. I can look at what happened. I can retry, right, and refresh. Bundle was sent. There was a lot of things inside of that folder. I'm getting impatient. There we go. Here's my images starting to come across. Pages haven't made it yet. It's now sending in all environments. Okay, so questions about push publishing. Okay, how did it find out the IP of the other server as you nowhere mentioned? You mean the receiver? I did. I put in configuration, push publishing environments. I put it right here inside my server. See, the first I did the environment, so maybe you didn't catch that, but then I did my server, right? So that's that server IP address, and that's that one right here, right? Then on my configuration, on my publishing environment, I put the IP address of my own local host, right? So both of them are there. Both IP addresses of both servers, my local and my other one. Otherwise, there certainly wouldn't be any communication, that's for sure. All right. And then let's go back to the publishing queue, status history, refresh. Oh, the bundle's sent. Well, there's a lot of stuff in there. I didn't think it was that much. And let's just see what's there now. It's sending. Okay. So let's move on while that is pushing over, and let's start getting into workflow schemes. Okay. So, and then we'll come back and take a look at him and make sure he push published over. And let me drag this away so we can look, because we're going to need a lot of room here. Oh, I got a little fail here. Maybe these guys weren't exactly the same Oh, I got a null identifier. I uploaded an empty image or something like that. Yeah, there is a configuration, and you can upload 0 files. There is a configuration to allow 0 content files, but that was probably in my WebDAV. Finder has a really bad way of whenever you drag things, the Mac OS will first create a 0 empty file, and then it will actually upload the file, and something must have happened with my WebDAV. But hey, it does tell you exactly why. I got a null file, probably in my image directory or something, or somewhere in my WebDAV. So that's troubleshooting your push publishing. But let's move on. We already saw a couple of successful push publishes, so I can go look for my 0 files later, or I could change my config and allow it. Okay, so workflows. So I want to create a brand new workflow scheme. Okay, so I can create, let's just call it product workflow. And I'll click save. And then I can start adding workflow steps. And maybe my first step would be, I'll call it editing. And then I'll add another workflow step, review. And then I'll add another workflow step, maybe published. And then from published, you want to have maybe archived, and you can keep going on and on. And then in each of those steps, you can go ahead and then, you can edit them and then say whether they're mandatory. You can schedule, some enabled actions. You can say what's your default sub action inside, action inside. And then you can start adding, well, if the very first thing that the content editors are doing is they're hitting this very first step, then I can go ahead and say, save. And the next step is just the current step. I don't want to move it to another step. I can decide what user groups. It automatically just saved it for me. Maybe I want, this guy, Joe, contributor, but he has a contributor role. So let me just go to contributor and add the role. And that way him and all his friends who are in the contributor role, they get access to this. And then there's the show when. Show this button next to the content whenever the user's editing, whenever they're looking at the list under the content tab, whenever it's either locked or unlocked, whenever it's a new piece of content, whenever it's already published, whenever it's unpublished, whenever it's archived. You can click all, if you want. And then you can say whether the user, whenever he clicks save, I wouldn't want him assigning to anyone because he clicks save. That's just for him or herself, right? And then assign to current user sounds right, but you could have it assigned to anyone, any user, and any role in the system, right? So we're just gonna say, it goes to the current user. That's fine. And we don't have to even notify them. So I'll even take off the notify assignee and then just put, save content only as a sub action. Okay. And I can also add a whole ton of sub actions, and I can add my own sub actions to this in a matter of hours, not days or weeks. It's very, very easy to do. And we have starter files. So you want a new sub action here? Here you go. Here's the starter file. Throw your jar file in here, Okay. So 4i's approval, if we needed a committee approval, and that is a sub action, we could put user IDs, a list of emails, comma separated, or a list of role keys separated. Then I just say how many in this group of however many I put up here. I'll say 4. 4 of them have to click on the 4i's approval before it'll actually go to the next step in the workflow as defined by the rest of the workflow step. And then I can put an HTML-rich velocity JavaScript or HTML email subject and email message, right? Pretty cool. I can even say, content.email. here and give personalized emails to people, or and do velocity inside here, and just very HTML rich and smart. What are the other sub actions that we got here? And each of them can have potentially their own configuration. I could put a push now, and then all I have to do is say the name of my server, which if I want to get it, I just go to open it up in a new tab, and my configuration, my push publishing environment is called production, right? So I could even click in here, and it's the environment name. So Amazon prod. And then I come back over here and I say I want them push to Amazon prod, and you could do a comma separated list of multiple environments here as well, and it just automates the push. And then you say, do you want to automatically force push everything or leave that false? And I would say, man, I would leave that false. Maybe you could put another button that says force the push. You can do whatever you want, and you could put another push now, and just make it have a different button other than save, right? It should say push if you're going to do a push publish, right? You totally configure the buttons to, tell the user what they're doing with the sub actions. Then the push publish sub action brings up the dialog box. So whether you want a one-click push or whether you want a dialog box where they can control, depending upon their user skill level, where they can control the push and send to different environments, etc., whatever you want to do. You can set variable values. Here's a set value. You can send a custom email action. Once again, Velocity JavaScript, content.email, content.anything. So if you got inbound marketing pages, I did an inbound marketing video over here on .cms.com where I installed live installed a Salesforce sub action. That's in our videos section. I'll pass that to everybody. If I was a front-end developer, I'd definitely watch these two videos. Here's an inbound REST API forms. You should definitely watch that. I'll chat it to everyone. Those are really two good front-end developer videos to watch. So we have, in addition to our online courses, there's also there was a build with .cms series. We have occasionally, how to build fun stuff. This inbound marketing was where I did the Salesforce action in the workflow, and also have a complete kind of
Thank you for joining us today.
Workflow process where I'm injecting I built a recipe kind of foodnetwork.com website, and whenever they click on the website on a recipe and they want to download the PDF or save the Paprika app, which I really did build, then they just provide their first name, last name, and email, and then they submit the request. That goes into a workflow action because our REST API forms go directly in, you target any workflow you want. Then there's an automated response that sends the email using that send email sub action in the workflow. And so you can see it in the video, and it's just all happening. I go straight to my email, I open it up, there's my custom email, so I can receive my recipe as a PDF attachment. I get my Paprika app. I actually can install that right into Paprika, which is a recipe manager. Then you see the users actually later end up getting pushed because of the timed actions in the workflow, and did they click on the link? Did they actually visit the website? Then it validates them as a Salesforce contact and injects it over to Salesforce. I log into my test Salesforce account and I see the new custom sub action forcing my inbound marketing user over to my Salesforce validated contacts. So a lot of good information in that one for you that I just sent you via the GoToWebinar chat. Ton of different sub actions. And of course, there's the published content, the reset the workflow, require certain specific multiple approvers, save the content, translate the content. So you can translate it into 40 different languages with one click of one button. All you have to do is put your service API key, and let's just say you have English, French, Spanish, German. If you create your content in German, you click this key, and as long as you have your Google Translate API key here, then it'll If you create your German first, it'll create it in your French, your English, and your Spanish. If you create it in English first, you click translate, it'll translate it the others. Now, does Google Translate work perfectly? No. But is it 80% there at least, so that the workflow action might, in addition to Google Translate, it might say, send to the Spanish translators, or send to the German translators, or whatever you want, and you could even have a different button. You could say, translate to German, and then that sends it to one group. Translate to Spanish, and then that sends it to another group. Whatever you want it to do. It's totally customizable. One of the most flexible workflow systems that exist in CMSs. So I click here on, I've already got one already established here. So I'm going to take a look at this particular workflow. We're going to do a little bit of link checking in it, and I'm going to look right now at all the users and verify what they can do at each step, which this is totally new for 5.0. And so if I look at what my contributor can do, there's 3 different roles that I already know have been permissioned here. Contributor can't do much. He can send for review, and that's about it, right? And we purposely made him a very limited guy. But what can the reviewer do? Reviewer can send for review, send to legal, return for edits, send to legal at each step. And what if I wanted to, even in legal approval, I wanted one of these other steps, which would be return for edits. Well, yeah, it's already here, but I can drag these around, and I can put these anywhere I want in any of these workflow steps. So let's see. So let's see, is there any other action? I could put my published action over here. I can drag that around. I could put a full delete over here if I wanted to, and it copies the action so that you don't have to do it. You don't have to be putting it every single level, because obviously if we're logging in as the legal approver, he should be able to publish right from the get-go, right, in the editing step or in the review step. So you don't have to copy those actions, and as you highlight over, it's showing you where else that action is. So I can just delete it from that one copied spot, the highlight over here, and it shows me it's here and it's here, and I'll just kind of put them back to where they were supposed to be, right? Okay. So, and then if I look at my publisher legal here, he can do quite a bit, right? So that's my final role, my final managerial role, and a quick little view into how our nested roles are set up. There's a hierarchical role control here, which my publisher legal is controlling my reviewer is controlling my contributor, and publisher legal is the master of them all. He's got the keys to the whole bag, right? So anything I give to the contributor automatically passes up to the reviewer and publisher legal. This is the only instance where we have reverse role inheritance. That way, if the person underneath being managed by the other 2 managers gets access to anything, the managers automatically control it as well. So our permissions integrate fully into our workflows and really make a nice match for granular control over every little sub action that you can possibly see, and filter by even before you start using it to double check. You can even export workflow schemes. You can publish workflow schemes from one to another. And if you push content that's actually controlled by one of the workflow schemes, it takes the workflow and updates it as well. So here, if I click on my, let me make one little change to my workflows. Let's go in here, and let's say before he sends it for review, I'm actually going to make a change here. Okay. And I'm going to say, before you send it for review, buddy, I'm checking your links. So I'm going to add a link checker here. And if you look at the link checker, you can comma separate only certain lists of fields, or if you leave it blank, it just checks all of them. And I want that to be the very first thing that is done. Now, if I go to my file content type, called document, that's being controlled by this, I want to make sure he's got a long description, WYSIWYG. Oh, that's published date. It's just a text area. I want a WYSIWYG here. So I'll put a long description here. Just so I can create my links fast and easy. Okay. And then I'm going to go to my content. I'm going to go to my document type content. And I don't want to test this as me. I want to test it as my limited user, right? So I can log in as, test it as Joe. He is a limited contributor role user. I'll go to my content search manager, and he can only create content, contact us content or documents. So I'm going to add new content, and it's document. And I'm going to choose a file of some sort, a picture of a house. Sure. Maybe that's the product they're selling. And then here is a link to the architect site. And then I'll click on the little link editor. This is TinyMCE. By the way, you can totally, using the TinyMCE plugin that supplies to our clients, totally take away any of the buttons that you want here. The formats, are fed by the main CSS. So total customization is available there as well. And I'm just going to put in a bad link. HTTP. Okay, hopefully that doesn't work. And here would be my alt tag, And I click OK. So I got a bad link. But he can save his draft all he wants as long as he saves it to the right place, which he's not allowed to save. There he is allowed to save to the resources direct folder. Okay, so now it's saved just fine. And now we see the send for review because that's when, it pops up whenever you don't have a lock on the content. Okay, so you have to save your content before you see the send for review button. So now he clicks on, and we can see our content is created right here. It's saved, right? He can't publish, right? So I'll open it back up. I just wanted to show you, that it was created on the back end. Then I click send for review. Yeah. Hey, can you check this? Which will give Jane, any reviewer role, because it's being assigned to the reviewer. We purposely did not allow this user to decide who's going to check this content. It goes to everyone who has that role, and then there's some sort of management process about who manages workflow tasks and then assigns them to people in that group, right? Which your workflow facilitates. Hey, can you check this content for publishing? And I click save, and then it says, you got a bad link in here, buddy. I'm not going to bother Jane. I'm not going to bother the reviewers. I'm not going to send them an email. I'm not going to send them links to this task. You need to fix this first. So that's kind of nice that you can forcibly say the link has to be fixed first. So I will just go to google.com just to be fast. And click OK. He's going to have to lock it for editing. He's going to have to save that change. Or I could have put a save action in the send for review, but I didn't, so I'm going to be lazy. Okay. Check this now, please. Okay. And now it sends just fine. And if he tries to look at this content again, it is now in the step review. So it gives you a little preview here. And he can't do anything now. It's out of his hands, right? Now I can go ahead and log in as, so I'm going to log out as him. I'm going to click here in my tasks, and I'm going to log in as that second level user. And we already previewed this in our workflow, right? Because you can preview by role. So we go to her tasks, and she sees that little 5 JPEG that we just had, this guy do. So we click on it, and it sees every little single change he's made, when he did it, what he did, the actions he took. I can make a comment and I could reassign it back to him. It gives me a preview of the file that was uploaded, shows me the URL, all of the metadata on the file, right? It could show more metadata, but Europe decided to be really kind to people who upload files. And so I can click edit content here and then go straight to my content. And then she can see only the exact buttons that I have configured in the workflow manager. She can either save it as draft or she can release the lock and send to legal, right? So let's just make it through the workflow. So she sends it to legal, makes some sort of comment, and then what kind of access does she have? Now we're out of our workflow task. The workflow task is no longer with her. We click on the content search manager, and now can she manage this document further? She can lock it for editing. She does have save as draft, and that's about it. It's out of her hands. It's really in the legal approval step, right? Now, what if legal approval, I could log in as, log out, and then I can log in as, there's a guy named Chris Publisher who has that publisher legal role. Now he'd have to go to his tasks. It's our Google Analytics dashboard as the default. And he can then see that here waiting for him, as well as he's overloaded. He's got a lot of tasks in his list. And so he goes to check it, and I think you guys get the idea now, on what he can do. And he can edit the content, return it for edits, publish it. If he returns it for edits, he can assign a specific person and say, this is no good, Joe contributor, do this again, save, and it goes back, right? So anything you want, very, very granular control over your content using workflow. And that kind of brings me to, let me bring it one step forward. It's kind of cool. You can even do crazy stuff like this. I'll publish it. And then once I do publish it, did I have somebody else had a lock on the, oh, it's locked by Jane. I'm a bad admin. I allowed that. My workflow didn't have an unlock on that. My bad workflow. So I'm just going to manually do it since my workflow step didn't include the unlock sub action. And then I will log in as him again. And Chris Publisher. And now we will save as draft. Editing. Oh, I must be missing a few steps on my workflow over here. It's just, we made new workflows for 5.0, so there's still a couple of steps missing here in the process. Yeah, I'm missing it here. So yeah, but you can add anything you wish, I can add that publish over here in the publish step. I can make sure that anyone who can publish content, current user, Chris Publisher, it's just a sample and you can manipulate it any way you want. But I just want to show it quickly and not spend more time on it. So let me unlock myself as the manager, take it away from Chris, publish it myself, and then finally show the thing that I wanted to show you, which was, do we not have a Twitter? It's in publish step. I guess for 5.0 we took it away. Or we haven't put it on yet. There's a little tweet guy, a Twitter feed that I could add. Tweet. But maybe the VTL file is not there, so Twitter status update. I don't even know if he's hooked up. Yeah, he's not. Okay. Well, you can even, if you configured it and actually put the, then you can click on that button it'll hook into your Twitter feed and pop up a light box. Let's see if I save that. Do I even get the light box? Probably not. It's in step published. I will probably not be able to. Release lock, republish. Oh, where's my little tweet guy? Anyway, I'd have to configure it to be able to do that anyway. So you can add as many custom workflow sub actions. Obviously, you got to test it before you before you actually hand it off to your users. But that's how you can step in as individual users and then test it out and see where you're missing steps that you need to place in the workflow. Okay. All right, I don't want to straggle too much here on the time, so let's go ahead and go to the broken link checker and show you how else you can do it, not only just on workflow, but you can actually come here to content, and there is a link checker here as well. So there's two different ways to do it even from here. I can go to my any content like that document content that has WYSIWYGs or text fields where you can go ahead and put links, and I can run a check right now on just that individual content type. Or I can actually go to my roles and tools, go to my CMS admin here, go to my role, go to tools, and I guess I would want that under system. And I will add another tool, and I'll make it my job scheduler. And there's my job scheduler. I can click save and then refresh. Now I've got my job scheduler down here, so I just added a brand new portlet, and I can go ahead and create new jobs. There's all sorts of system jobs here that you can go ahead and monitor. But I can create a new job, call it nightly link check, because it could be that the content goes stale. So it's nice to have that on the content so that they're not content publishers not generating bad content. But what if it goes stale after they've created it? So I can run a nightly check, run it once every day at, well, this would be the start date. So I just maybe want to start it now. And then the class to be executed, I can pick multiple jobs, and sysadmin training kind of goes over the other ways that you can go ahead and schedule cron jobs. And then maybe I want it once every day at 1 a.m. I put that cron expression there. And then I click save, and now there's a nightly link check that's going to send emails and notifications and workflow tasks to everyone who's got a bad link, and we'll keep annoying them on a nightly basis until they start fixing their links. Okay. So 3 different ways to link check. You can link check from your workflow. You can link check by going to the content and link checker and running manually on a specific type of content. Like here's our generic content. We automatically generate some bad links on purpose so we can see that. And also we can run a nightly job that runs it all the time, and we don't have to touch a thing, and tells everyone who has bad links and gives them workflow links back to their content. Okay. And now let's go ahead and cover internationalization basics. And we are actually done ahead of time. So, any questions? Yeah, there's a question. Is Instagram and Facebook also available? That would be a customization. You just go ahead and set up. But like I said, it's the most extended thing in .cms that we have. So the same way that we actually, I don't know whether there's still that file, and that is in custom work. Here's the Twitter VTL right here. So you could actually create your own Facebook VTL. You just have to, see how to integrate with Facebook or Instagram. I'm actually rewriting the starter. This is what our starter automatically downloads with, but there's nothing hidden. There's nothing that you can't do if you can write the code to integrate with another system. Our YouTube widget that I dropped, you can create your own, it's just, you got to integrate via whatever service that YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, or Instagram is providing. You write in the code, and then in your workflow, you just call that Twitter VTL. I'd have to remember my path to my Twitter VTL. I just don't think we've hooked this up for 5.0 yet. But I'm rewriting the starter, and I will try and see if I can find time to write a VTL file for Twitter and Instagram. It won't be 5.0, but maybe 5.1. I'll be able to find the time. And then if I went to my workflows, you can actually do just like this. You want to execute some custom code in your tweet. Then I can just say, I want this custom code right here. I want to .parse. And then here's the path to my Twitter VTL. Show it in all, make sure my admin user can use it. I don't know who else I'd want to add, but assign to current user. I don't want comments. Twitter status update, I'd have to configure that as well, but I still don't think that's going to give it to me. But tweet, hey, I got it pop up. Okay. Now I don't really have it configurable, but you can do the same thing. Yeah, I will try, Patrick, to see if I can get at least Facebook and Instagram for 5.1, but the same way that I can just say, how would I send something over to Instagram or Facebook? You can take what we're doing. You can take the Twitter VTL right here that we provide in the starter and say, how do I create my own VTL? I see how I can do that. And you just parse the code straight from the workflow. And boom, that popped up a light box. It allowed us to start, Tweety counting. I can't believe I just said Tweety counting, but yeah. And then send over to the configured Twitter account, right? So internationalization. Here under system, where are we? Types and tags, languages. All right. So let's see how many languages I've got installed right now. I've got English, I've got Spanish. So if I go to any of my content, like that JPEG guy over there, I can then switch between English and Spanish and then create a new Spanish. And then I could say, do you want to populate the English into the Spanish? I just say yes, and then I translate. There's not much to translate, but I'll go ahead and translate this one and say, and if I had the translate a Google API, I'd be able to hit a translate button and just translate it automatically. But I'll say, okay, so type some Spanish, save as draft, and now I've got a Spanish version. And if I want to go to advanced and then search all of my languages or just search the Spanish, I can see I have very little documents created in Spanish. I'll go back to all, okay? But I can't create a French version of it until I install my new language, right? So it's under types and tags, languages. So I want to add a new language here and add as many as I wish. My language, we use 2-letter language in country codes. You can Google that, but French would be FR, language would be French, country code would be capital FR, and the country would be France. Right, and we have all the little iconology already saved. That is, if you use the right 2-letter country and linguistic codes and everything like that, and it could be French from another country, right? Because there are dialectical differences. The differences, sometimes it's even adding alphabetical letters. If you look at the difference between Mexican Spanish and Spain Spanish, there's some extra letters added. So it does matter, and we do dialectically say, it's from this region. and account for that. And so now if I wanted to create my little 5 JPEG and I wanted to switch from into French, and if I had my translate and my Google Translate key, it would translate into potentially all 3 different languages. Well, you'd have to create the language version in one, so I'd create it to the other 2. Then I can keep installing as many languages as I wish. All right, switch to my French version. Now I could say, yes, I want to populate that, and I don't speak French, so we French. Okay, and I'll save as draft. And now, if we go ahead and put that, I don't know whether I have pages where I can put that document content type, but let's just say, see if I can drop that on my training homepage, see if my containers are set up to take that type of content, click on edit, and let's see, can I go to content and document? No, because that's mine. Maybe over here I can add content and no. Okay, I could make my container, but let's see, the resources page has to have index. There we go. And he's pulling dynamically though, so he might not allow. There we go. Okay, it's already showing up right here. So there we go. And so now I can see all my versions of all my content, but if I select any of them and I place it, now I just got to move this guy who I just placed manually up to the top, or let me just make it easy on myself. Just click accept and get rid of my widget. Okay, so now I just want to look at my page in all of these different languages. Since I did create 5 JPEG in the 3 different languages, now I wish the container would be showing the more, but if I switch now to Spanish, I can see the document's still there. I switch to French, my document's still there, right? And then I could also put some sort of message here, and maybe I want to put generic, well, let me create a new one. Generic message in English. Save and publish. And then I'll lock it for editing, and I'll create my sentence, yes, I do. Save and publish, and create my French version. And save and publish. Now, I can, well, I thought I created my guy. Did I just create him and not drop him? All right, let me drop select. There we go. And so then I'll just drag this guy up above, and then I'll switch to my Spanish. I got my Spanish message. Switch to my French. I got my French message, right? And so pages persist. Pages can have language versions though as well. Everything that's a .cms object can actually have a language version, including your assets. And as you drag them, even via WebDAV, you can use that, /1, /2, /3. Right now, the exact language numbers would be 1, 2, and 3. You can see that the parameter language _ID equals 1 up in the URL is actually showing us the the language version. So I could open up an incognito window and look at the resources page. So let me actually open that up in my localhost 8080 without going on the back end. I'll show you how you could manually switch languages if you wish. So there's my document page. This is English, and then I can do question mark language underscore ID equals 3, and then hit my French, right? I don't think I published my French version of my document, but I did with the generic content. And so now we're flipping between those just by setting it up in the browser. And you can do URL mapped content. You can do every type of content, can switch, and you can put language flags, up in the top as well. And we have many, many, many different clients running in, multiple languages, sending with the workflows to translation services. Translation services have a super limited, almost an intranet type login where they just step in, translate fields, send that back workflow. You can even have them, accessing the content via REST API form, adding the translations, that sends it back into workflow. There's so much flexibility in .cms. It's kind of crazy, all of the different things that you can do. And there is also the concept, last thing on languages, of language variables. So let's just say you wanted to create side navigations, menus, anything in .cms, a button on a form, and you want that to be auto-translated. We do have the concept of language variables. So if we wanted to have a submit button or something like that, I could actually create a key, submit, right? And then in English, that translation is submit, right? I can save and publish that. Then I want to add a Spanish version of that. Yes. And I will say this one means subir. And then French, I don't know what that would be. Maybe rechercher or something like that. Okay, and I'm not putting in accents. Okay, but it has to have the same key. And then, and this is in our documentation, .cms.com, and documentation, and global language variables, and you can see how to text.get, and you can actually call specific language versions if you want. I'm going to do a simple text.get here. I will maybe say here, I'm going to publish my page first. And I'm going to switch to English, and I'm going to edit my page, and I'll add a widget up to the top. That'll be a simple widget. There was simple widgets mean I just want to drop the code right here. Language variables. And so I could say my submit button. And then I can put in text.get, and then my language variable key, right, which is submit, and save and publish. Now this guy is going to be in all of my versions. He's going to say the same thing. So put him up here. Publish, and here's my submit button. And so now I can switch my language versions, and it should auto-translate, grabbing the value. Now, this part won't, because I didn't actually translate my widget into 3 different languages, but I could. But the code part will translate, and it'll get those. Oh, and there's actually a default language variable that's already in the system that is pulling the file automatically. And then in my French, oh, it did a better translation than me. Okay, so And there is via WebDAV under the system folder, you can see some of the terms that are automatically there. And you could control those and edit those via WebDAV. So that's automatically being translated. Here, if we took a term that is maybe translate. And we save and publish that. And then I switch to Spanish. I say traducir. And I save and publish. And then I text.get without going back and editing my auto translation files. Let me see here. Oh, it's on the resources. And I will edit that guy and say translate. And save and publish my widget and publish my page. And he's saying translate in English, and in Spanish it's traducir, right? So, it's two different places that you can actually get those files. There is in the system in WebDAV. There is a default translation files that you can edit, or you can go ahead and put in your own language variables, whichever you wish. And that is the end of our training for today.